Hey, what's up, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look at the Nintendo eShop release of Turok Dinosaur Hunter, a remaster version of the Nintendo 64 classic released back in 1997. Excuse me, for the Nintendo Switch. The remaster version is also available on PC and Xbox One. But we'll be focusing on the Switch version, and also it's worth pointing out that I believe the original version, although I don't know if they're still available now, is also available on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And if you're interested in any of the gameplay footage, I'll have a link in the description though. For me though, I have fond memories of playing Turok Dinosaur Hunter. I remember when the game came out back in 1997. It was during my senior year of middle school and around the time of my freshman year of high school. And I remember going to Blockbuster Videos, yes, the Blockbuster Videos. I remember renting that game sometimes and basically playing that game on my Nintendo 64 back then though. And it was basically the first time I started trying out, games like first-person shooters and so forth, but I really wouldn't get into that genre until a little bit later, though. And it was an interesting title at the time. It was like the first a really interesting FPS shooter, basically, and using the Nintendo 64 controller was sort of an interesting experience since you use basically the C buttons to move Turok around and so forth. And of course the series also spawned into Turok 2 and Turok 3. Both would use the N64 expansion pack. It would also saw the release of Turok Evolution, which really didn't get great response or great reviews, to what was an attempt at a Turok reboot for the PS3 and the 360 in 2007, but since then the series kind of has remained dormant. So it was interesting when the studio Night Dive basically started to release a remaster version of the classic Turok for the Xbox and then towards the PC. And then we learned about that they were bringing it over to the Nintendo Switch, along with basically the upcoming release of Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, a remaster of that version. So having played the original one and played a bit of the remastered one, I honestly have to say that although the game, some of the stuff may seem a little bit dated by today's standards, this was released back in 1997 after all, Turok Dinosaur Hunter, in my opinion, still holds up very well. So why don't we get started with our pros and cons, and we'll start off with the first one, and that is the pros. And the first one has to do with the gameplay. And to me, the game, for those who've ever played this game, this was developed by Iguana Entertainment, which would later form Retro Studios that would produce the excellent Metroid Prime trilogy and all. And the gameplay, you can see some of the DNA of the Metroid Prime trilogy into Turok when they developed that game, though. There is a bit of exploration, although not near the same level and so forth. And you basically have to hunt either from weapons to keys to open up different levels and so forth. And the gameplay, as far as the gunplay and so forth, the game gives off a bit of a Doom and Wolfenstein feel to it, which to me is certainly not a bad thing, though. It's basically, at least with the remaster version, at least it's fast-paced and so forth, and you're focused. So it's not like it's like what Doom and Wolfenstein would be like. You're also looking for weapons, you're also hunting down different varieties of enemies and so forth. So from the gameplay though, it's still solid even after all these years, even though this game came out before GoldenEye came out, which would revolutionize FPS shooters. The next thing I want to talk about is the visuals. And while the visuals still shows its age to a certain degree, like I said, released in 1997. This was on a time when 3D was still, not near where they are today, though. They did improve in some areas of the visuals, though. This time around, there is certainly less fog than there was in the original Nintendo 64 release. So you can see a little bit in the distance more than you would in the past, which could come in handy. Like if you see an enemy in the distance and you want to snipe them with like a bow and arrow, you could do that. So visually the game is an improvement. Plus it runs at a rock solid 60 frames per second based on my time with it, both docked and undocked. So visually speaking, still shows some of its age, but it's definitely an improvement from the original N64 release. And last but not least is the controls, and they are a godsend. So as I mentioned earlier though, when playing this game on the Nintendo 64 back in the day, you had to either move your character around with the C button and look with the analog stick. That was okay then, but by today's standards, obviously it would be a little bit difficult to play it, especially in the age of the dual analog sticks, which is a godsend for this game because controls are rock solid on this game though. The dual analog sticks makes the experience way better than it was in the past though. It's worth pointing out the game does have motion controls, and the motion controls are kind of like how they would be in like the Zelda games, you know, like Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD, or Breath of the Wild though, where you basically move your controller to sort of aim and all. They're optional though. They're not necessary to use, and you could turn off the gyro aiming if you want to in the option menu. So they're optional. They're a nice addition to have, but they may not be for everybody. But luckily, it's an optional choice. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. But overall, the controls are rock solid, and they are certainly a godsend for a classic game like this. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 2, which is the cons. So we'll take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of the Nintendo eShop release of Turok Dinosaur Hunter for a N64 classic on the Nintendo Switch. So now that I gave you my pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are really 3 cons I could really think of though. The first one we'll start off with is it being a single player experience. Now, just to be clear, I don't have a problem with that. I like games that have single player experience. I've always enjoyed those type of games, and so to me, this is a plus. That said, it might be a negative for some people though, because the game doesn't have any multiplayer or anything like that. So to a certain degree, the replayability can be a bit limited. Again, that's not a huge con for me, but it might be for others. So basically, this is a single player only experience, and if you're not really a big fan of those type of games though, you may want to look someplace else, because you're not going to find a multiplayer mode or anything like that in Turok, the remaster version of Turok Dinosaur Hunter. Next thing I want to talk about is the platforming in the game, and there are certainly plenty of platforming in Turok Dinosaur Hunter, which it can be tricky and difficult at times, because doing platforming, especially in a first-person shooter or in a first-person view, can be a little bit difficult though, in terms of trying to aim the jump, try to aim and land on the platform very carefully, and Turok is certainly no exception, especially in certain levels though. It's like level 3, for example, when you're platforming to fight the boss and go straight towards the boss and all, it can be a little difficult at times. So the platforming can be tricky and difficult in a game like this. And last but not least though, there is no autosave as far as I am aware of in this game though. There are save points in this game, and they act just like when you played it back on the N64 days. When you get to a save point, they'll ask you if you want to save your game or not, and you could decide to do that. But there's no like autosave or quick save or anything like that. So unless you reach a save point, any progress you made can be easily lost, and you may have to start from the last save point, which means you have to go through that area that you may have had issues with again, and that could be a problem for some people though. It's not a huge issue for me though, and all that stuff, having played this game before, but it might be an issue for some people. overall, Turok Dinosaur Hunter, the remaster version, is still a fun game. I still view it as an N64 classic, and it still holds up very well to this day. Yes, the visuals are a bit dated and all that stuff, but the gameplay is still fun and spot on as well. And yes, it is a single player experience, which could be okay for some, may not be for others, and the platforming can be a little difficult at times, but it hasn't stopped me from enjoying this N64 classic though. And if you're a fan of games like Doom or Wolfenstein, I really would recommend you take a look at Turok Dinosaur Hunter though. And with the sequel, Seed of Evil, supposedly coming to the Nintendo Switch, basically a remaster version, I am hoping that the developers can remaster Turok 3. I would love to see a remake of Turok Evolution, maybe improve some areas that people had issues with it. And I would really, really love to see if they could do a Turok 4. I'm not talking about a remastered version of the PS3 or the Xbox 360 version. I'm talking about a brand new entry in the Turok series. That would be really, really great if they could do something like that. So overall, my takeaway from Turok Dinosaur Hunter, or the remastered version of Turok game, is that it was fun back in 1997 when the game originally came out, and with all the quality of life and certain improvements to this remastered version, it is still a fun game. And like I said before, if you're a fan of games like Doom and Wolfenstein, you'll probably enjoy Turok Dinosaur Hunter. Okay, this concludes this video review of the remaster version of Turok Dinosaur Hunter for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about the remaster version of Turok Dinosaur Hunter coming to the Nintendo Switch? Is this a game that you were looking forward to? Do you remember playing it when it came out back in 1997? Did you enjoy it then? Did you not enjoy it then? Do you think some of the improvements they made to this remaster makes the game more enjoyable than it did in the past, or it didn't really matter at all? Do you think that the Turok series needs to make a comeback at all, or do you think the series should just remain buried? Did you like what I said in this video? Didn't like what I said in this video? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think, and I hope you hit that like button. I would appreciate it, and I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, and I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then.